At Bethany Global University, after the first 2 years on campus, in the third year or their junior year, the students at Bethany Global University go overseas and they serve at our gateway platforms around the world, which are in essence sites where students are placed in groups. Now they're in fairly small groups, 8, 10, 5, 6, because we don't want to have such a large group that you end up with a subculture in another country. So we wouldn't send 30, and we don't send them for 3 months. A lot of intercultural studies degrees at other universities will send their students overseas, but they'll be overseas for 3 months or 5 months. Our students go overseas for 16 months. We do that very intentionally. We want them in the country long enough to experience all of the culture shock that takes place, to reach the low point of living in another culture, and then to come out of that and really acclimate and build themselves into a culture and understand what it means to live successfully in another culture. And it is a process. During that global internship experience, which is what we call the overseas experience time with the students, they're taking courses online with Bethany Global University, and those online courses are dovetailed with the activities they're engaged in on the ground in the country that they're in. And that global internship is broken into 4 terms, and each term has a very specific objective and some specific outcomes we want to see from those terms. So at a very broad view, in their first term, they're learning language and they're beginning to understand the culture they live in. In their second term, they're continuing to learn language, and now they're doing actual ethnographic study and some research into the culture that they're in. They're building relationships with the community around them. They're continuing to learn language and skills living in the country. In the third term, they now get engaged in ministry to a much greater degree than in the first 2 terms with our partner organizations. Bethany International, the parent organization that Bethany Global University is in relationship with, has partners all around the world that we work with. So the student will be, for example, in Thailand, living in Chiang Mai, studying language. They're in the third term now. They're serving with a partner organization, perhaps working with women coming out of prostitution, perhaps working with street children, perhaps working with businesses. Just depends on what the available ministry opportunities are for the students that have already been set up and are already underway. There's students serving in them today. And then in the fourth term, they've really now become almost completely immersed into the culture. They're still doing research. They're continuing their research of how does the religion of the country that they're in really operate, and what are the thinking of that religion, and how do you bring Christianity into that religion and help bring people to a salvation knowledge of Jesus from the place they're at in the religion of the country that they're in. The language that they've learned now continues to move on. They start to become almost fluent in that language, depending on the country they're in and the difficulty of the language. They are making relationship and continue to build relationship with their community around them, their neighbors, the people who live in their apartment building, the people they see at the coffee shop. And then toward the end of that term, we go through a process of teaching them how to leave the field well and come back to the U.S. Like, how do you leave that country in a good way that really hands those relationships off to the right people with the local church, and then come back to the U.S. So that's kind of a broad view of the global internship. In the middle of the global internship, we have field staff that leave from the United States and go visit each site, meet with students, meet with them one-on-one, process how the experience is going, where they can learn, where they need to be challenged, opportunities for improvement. And there's also a vacation built into the middle of the experience for 2 weeks where the students can actually visit other countries in proximity to where they are, or they could come home. Very few of them come back to the United States in that break. They actually visit other countries in proximity to where they are to expand their understanding, expand their experience globally.